I'm so glad that you accepted this invitation for this birthday celebration. My idea is just to celebrate and see you, talk a bit with you, and present you to my Brazilian fellows to learn from your experience. For me, it's so amazing how I always learn from your experience when we are talking, when we are doing a dance research. So it's a bit more about this. It would be a
Okay, thank
small
you.
talking.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
First question, like the Choreomundus question. I would like
Yes.
to present yourself and uh, say where are you come from.
Yes. So I'm Egil Bakka, uh, born and bred in Norway, in a small place called Sauda, in a mountain farm, and at present I'm living in Trondheim as a retired professor of dance studies.
I want to know about your background, Professor, and your
Uh,
relation with dance.
my father was a farmer on a small mountain farm, and I was the first in the family who took a university education and moved off from the farm to Bergen, then Oslo, then Trondheim, and I started out dancing in a folk dance club in my hometown as a teenager.
Do you like dancing? Why?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Having spent all my life to look at it and work with it and teach it and study it, yes, of course, I like dancing, and I suppose the first point is that it gives a safe way of being around people, of social interaction, and secondly, uh, I feel that it gives me what I would call flow. So uh,
Could you say what has been a seminal experience for you related to dance?
I suppose it was when I started to experience the flow, when I started to experience that my dancing got at a level where I could experience flow.
Mm. Could you give me an example? One
Yeah,
example of some kind of experiences that you.
yeah. I remember one very late night. I came back, going back to my house uh, in after a dance party in the local youth club, and I was sort of very tired and somehow had a feeling of being a little bit outside myself. It was a club of no alcohol, so it wasn't. But I imagine that this was a similar feeling of excitement and a feeling of that my body just moved and did what was expected, and that I just enjoyed the music and never thought about what happened with my body. And that sort of late night on my way back home, I remember that I became very much aware of that feeling and thought about it.
I believe you could talk a bit about how you set up an environment for dance research in Trondheim or in Norway. You have this driving to put people together.
The beginning was that I became very fascinated by all these dances that we learned in the youth club. But then I realized that they were not only dances in a book, which they were somehow to the youth club mostly, but they were also dances that had been found around the country among normal, usual people. And and I was told then on a later stage when I start to ask more about it, that my grandfather's neighbor, who died long before me I was born, had been dancing a dance which was well known in Norway in the old days, the Springer, which gave me sort of some kind of glimpse back in time, which I couldn't reach. But then I realized that throughout Norway, there were a lot of people like this man who knew dances which had not ever been recorded, and which was still to some degree there. And that was the beginning of my long work with collecting dances all over the country. So I filmed, traveled around and filmed people dancing. Then then that brought about that young people who perhaps present at the filming when I filmed their grandparents or in the community house, they wanted to learn the dances. They would like to take these dances back to their community because they had also to a large extent, learned folk dance as the dances of the books. So then we started trying to work with dances from the films and with the old people, and to revive and bring them back to the local communities, which was then a long period. And then it became so much work with it that I thought it would need to be systematized. So I started a university course teaching the taking back and reconstruction of folk dancing, as well as the history and analysis of dance, which then started the whole row of educational programs that I was part of establishing. And then, of course, having to teach such things, I published a number of manuals on folk dance were collected, but then I realized also, in order to teach at university level, I had to do research, which could be the foundation for my teaching. And then was when I started more of writing on dance analysis, dance history, dance in social life, and so on. And then came the international educations, and then I got a bit more time to write in English. Most of my early publications were in Norwegian because it was aimed at the Norwegian market.
There is a question for me now that I returned to Brazil. It's about translations, about languages. Yesterday I gave a seminar and a lot of people asked me about this problematic with translation. You said that firstly you wrote mostly in Norwegian and after in English. This is a problematic for you or not? How you deal with this idea of translation?
I never translate. It's impossible. I had sometimes when I tried to have somebody translate some of my earlier Norwegian books into English, and I gave it up. The worlds are so different. The people who are the target groups for such books are so different that it doesn't make sense. So I feel I have to write, if I'm writing about the topic, I may have to write one article in English and one in Norwegian. Sometimes I do translate though, but then perhaps just Google Translate to give main ideas of it. But
but how you deal with some concepts that are not translated, but you have to write in Norwegian and also in English. For example, for me, I have some concepts from my background that is in Kibundu and Kikongo, that is the language that we speak in our ritual, and I have the Portuguese and I have the English. It's not a measure of translate, but it's a way of how to describe and explain these different concepts for different ways of perceiving way of perceiving how culturally we speak about these concepts.
Yeah, exactly. And that's my big issue with much of English literature, that you make very poor and very thin translations of words from other languages, which makes it either uh, totally not understandable, or makes it very sort of simplified. And so I think that what is necessary is really to give the original word and explain what it means in another language, and then that needs to be a big and complex explication if the words are complex, which they mostly are. So Svikt is one of those examples where I chose to use the Norwegian word instead of inventing an English or one, or translated it into something simple English. So, and I've written pages up and pages down about how can Svikt then be understood as a word and as a term.
How how have this research experience driven you into the fields you are working now?
Well, I mean, that's been somehow driven because I have uh, seen all the time seen new tasks that are needed to be addressed. So first I saw the task to collect answers, then I saw the task to analyze and transmit them as a follow-up of that. Then I saw the need of teaching at university, which then required research. And then I distributed my research onto the topics where I felt it was most needed for my teaching for a good while. Now I'm perhaps more having an agency of working for social dance, and dances that are not dancing that are not is not a dance art, but which is the dancing of the majority of the world's population. That is all kinds of dances with social functions, except or excluded from dance art, because dance art has such an enormous uh, wealth of university educations, even if it's compared to the population of the world who's doing this dance art. They are very few, but they have an enormous amount of resources in terms of university education programs. So at the present, this I would call it almost decolonization of the dance education is one of my favorite agenda topics.
Oh, about this, what role do you think a dance researcher have in society?
I think that it can be all kinds of roles. I mean, obviously, we need researchers who are also dealing with the arts, but the problem is that if you deal with the arts, you tend to not want to do a research that is standing at a certain distance of the arts. So this split between arts and uh, and uh, and research can be problematic. But then I think that the understanding of the role of dance in all kinds of human relations, and the way it could be used if it was taken seriously, is an important topic. And that also the problem that dance is an important intangible cultural heritage, and it's due to the very strong globalization, it's one of the cultural heritage parts that is most quickly disappearing.
Does understanding dances from different cultures will help us to overcome and prevent racial and ethnic divisions?
I think that's a bit too much to be asked, but I think, but I think that if you learn enough about dances to see that they all have value in each their community, in each their way, and this value that it has for the community should be recognized as equally important for all communities. Then you have then you take away some of the prejudiced ideas about primitive and civilized and highly advanced material, and see that the idea of that anthropology managed to get through about the equal value of all human beings and all cultural elements and cultures.
There is any questions you would like to ask to me?
Well, I'm very excited to see how you will be uh, establishing and distributing your work with health and candomblé. It's really I hope it will be a breakthrough for what the term of social health.
All the experience that I lived in Choreomundus made a huge difference in my way to perceiving dance, my body, and the relation with candomblé and my experience, my previous experiences. It's been amazing and challenging at the same time to live this, to live this now.
Uh,
What's the best advice you can give in relation to the moment we are living?
well, I would say that uh, try to see if you can be useful for somebody. That's the best way of feeling that you are alive, and try to accept help whenever offered, because that's also a way of letting other people stay alive, stay and feel alive, and because that's an an advice that's perhaps particularly important for elderly people like myself. Don't pack up your things and wait for the death, but try to be active.
This professor, it was just a small talking.
Okay.
It was a small talking just to see you and celebrating. So I would like to celebrate my anniversary talking with you. It
That's a
wasn't a
very
way.
nice idea.
Yes, it's the idea to connect it in another way. It's my way to be active. I
Yeah,
believe also.
and it's a way of offering uh, to make other people uh, feel useful.
Is
So I
this?
wish you a very good celebration, Dan, and thank you for including me in this.
Oh, it's all my pleasure. It's a huge pleasure to talk to you. Always, always is a huge pleasure. It's I'm very happy with your acceptance for this.
Oh, yeah.
See you. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.